Good day, everybody. Welcome to today's video. I got this wire hanging down, but what I'm going to do today is replace the rear pinion seal in my 2006 F-150 4x4. I did a rear pinion seal probably about 6 years ago, maybe even longer, but now it's starting to leak again. Let's go through the process of replacing it and getting back on the road before the seal fails and we're in some serious trouble. This is a safety tip right here. Make sure your front wheel is chalked so it cannot roll forwards or backwards. And then at the back, when it's on jack stands, you want it up high enough that your tires are off the ground. And you need to put the truck in neutral. The truck is placed in neutral so you can rotate the drive shaft and get all the bolts out. They are 12.12 millimeter and they're not going to be your friend. Be prepared. You got to be straight on the bolt, otherwise you'll strip out. Weapon of choice is a long extension and a short socket. If you're lucky, you can just pull the drive shaft off, but in my case, it's pretty rusted in there, so it's going to take a little bit more abuse to get it off. Fast forward motion here. I'm just going to take my hammer and tap it, rotate it, tap it some more. You can see it's starting to split. Tap it some more, and then it's off. Some rear ends, not all of them, have a crush sleeve. So in order to get your spec back to where it is, you want to measure your rolling resistance, which it looks like mine's about 75 inch-pounds, and that's with the tires on and everything roughly. So when I go to put the nut back on, that's where I need to be, because if you crush that crush sleeve even more than what it is, it's actually a one-time use. And if you crush it further, you're going to tighten up the preload on the bearings, and that's going to wear them out quicker. But I don't think the forward rear end has a crush sleeve. We're going to find out. So let's get that nut off and see what's going to be behind there. Before you remove the nut, doesn't hurt to spray it down with some lubricant to help it come off easier. Now I need to pull that flange off. Puller like this style right here works absolutely perfect. I've used it before, so I know it works. 2-jaw. Now you just want to make it come off nicely. You don't want to hammer on it. You can go by hand, use an impact gun, but be gentle, because if you put too much stress on the flange and she's not going to come off, there's a possibility that the puller may break or the flange may bust and things can get ugly, real ugly. You're gonna have some leakage, so make sure you got a drip pan underneath. I'm gonna clean up that seal face a little bit. Before removing the seal, I like to clean up as much dirt and debris away from it as possible. Just get less contaminants in there. Now comes the fun part. Now we gotta get that seal out. Chisels, hammer, screwdriver work well. So upon closer inspection, there is a crush sleeve in there. You can see it. I'm just cleaning off the face of the differential before I install the new seal. And then make sure you try to clean out as much contaminants as possible. Couple ways to install the seal, of course, if you don't have the tool. The first method I'm going to use, I used before, is use a brass hammer and just kind of tap gently around the sides. Works good. However, that seems to be too much trouble. I got this part out of my ball joint toolkit and it goes over top. But if you're going to use this method here, make sure it doesn't interfere with the seal because that's going to damage it. Now, one thing you got to worry about too is when you're tapping the seal in, you're going to have to worry about that spring popping out. So, I got some wheel bearing grease that I'm going to pack inside there to make sure that spring does not come out. What you want to do is pack that with grease. The grease will keep that spring in place so that it won't pop out. And since this is wheel bearing grease, you don't have to worry about it interfering with your oil. Just pack in enough that you feel that the spring isn't gonna come out. We need to clean this face off. Remember what I said about clamping force? If you have rust in between your flange or whatever, and once that rust works its way out, you lose your clamping force. So let's clean this up. Make sure you also clean the drive shaft flange as well. Just don't do one side. Use some brake cleaner, be generous. Spray it down good. Get as much crap out as you possibly can. This backside here is where you really want to clean. And then we're going to inspect the seal surface. See right there, you can see where the seal's riding. So if you have a pinion seal leak that doesn't go away even after you change the seal, you may have a pretty good groove in there that allows the oil to seep through, which in that case you either have to replace the flange or get a sleeve that'll take care of that problem. But it's not too bad yet. Clean out the inside of that plastic ring as best as you can. If this ring is busted, deformed, replace it, and then make sure your flange in the front is cleaned off from rust, and then we're ready to reinstall. It's never good to put it in dry, so I use some assembly grease on the flange. I like to use this instead of like bearing grease because this will dissipate while the bearing grease will just stay there and collect dirt and most likely ruin the seal faster. But this stuff here is way better. Now if you have 9.75 rear end, this is the seal number from SKF. Just take your time with the seal, be gentle, because it'd be really easy to wreck it. And last thing you want to do is have to run down to the parts store and get another one. Takes a little bit of banging, that's why I say use the grease. And if you knock your spring out, if you looked in there, you'd probably see it hanging down on the pinion, but looks good. So now we can install the flange and we're done. Some people will probably disagree, but I like to use the impact on low power to get the flange on, makes it a little bit easier. And then I'm going to use some blue Loctite on the nut. Some people are going to say red. I'm going to use blue. I've never had issues. If you're concerned, I'd recommend red. It's permanent. I used blue last time. It worked like a charm. Now what I like to do, since there is a crush collar in there, as soon as the impact gun hits the end, I stop. You don't want to try to impact it anymore. As soon as I hit that stop mark, that's where I stop. If you keep on hammering on it, you're going to crush that collar even more, and you're going to ask them for trouble real quick. This should be common sense, but make sure you top up your differential fluid when you're done. Let's put some Loctite on these bolts. I'm going to use blue. Make sure the truck's in neutral again. We're going to put all the bolts in loosely, then tighten them up. Just going to fast forward all through this. Make sure your Loctite is on when you stick all the bolts in loosely. And like I said before, you have it in neutral so you can turn the drive shaft to make it more accessible for you. And this is where the long extension comes in handy. Rotate the drive shaft, spin it, tighten it, rotate it again, tighten it. One more to go, tightened, and we're done. Just on a road trip. Everything is sounding and feeling good. There you have it, rear seals installed. Everything's back together. If you guys have any questions or comments, post them below. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for watching.